G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated Podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Righto, I've just come back from the chemist. I got my script for dexamphetamine, so I'm all dexied up once again, which is great when it comes to pushing my ADHD back into that corner. But it made me think, Dexy's, I've had a bit of an up and down sort of history with dexamphetamine, so just to sort of provide some context, remember I'm on the Vyvanse as well. So the plan is the Vyvanse, the long-acting version of dexamphetamine, dexamphetamine. It's long-acting, like I said, so I have it in the morning. And then when it starts to wear off, which usually for me is after about 4 to 5 hours, then I've got the option of having 2 5-milligram short-acting dexamphetamine tablets to sort of prolong the effects of the Vyvanse, if that makes sense, to give it a bit of a boost, and that's exactly what they are. They are boosters, and I don't have to use them every day unless my day requires it, but you know me, the workaholic, I'm always thinking I should be doing something, so it's very, very seldom that I believe that I don't need the boosters because there's always something that needs to be done, and that is one thing that's not been a great side effect, even though on the face of it you'd think it probably is. But the problem is the Dexys feed my workaholic side, that feeds that sub part of my personality, of my psyche, that believes that we haven't achieved enough and we've got to keep pushing. And dexamphetamine and Vyvanse as well are both the perfect fuel for that part of my psyche, and I've got to keep that managed. I'm not doing a great job of it, as you know, so far, but that's what I continue on in therapy with, trying to get a hold of this workaholic and channeling it when appropriate. But yes, Dexys I've had an up and down sort of history with. When I first got prescribed, I was prescribed just the short-acting dexamphetamine, so I was having, I think it was 1 in the morning, 5 milligrams, 1 in the morning, then I'd have another one, and then I think there'd be a third one towards the end of the day. Now, for some people, that seems to work pretty good. For me, it didn't. It really fueled another thing. It fueled my emotional dysregulation. Yes, there's that word, dysregulation, but it did. You think about it, having amphetamine every 2 to 3 hours, popping another Dexy, if you've got moods that are all over the shop and I'm ramping up and I'm ramping down here, there and everywhere, the up and down nature of having amphetamine every 2 to 3 hours really fed into that and made that quite unbearable. So that's why pretty early on in the game, I got switched to Vyvanse because it's longer acting, it's smoother, it's not the undulations in my mood anywhere near as much, although there is a little negative, which I'll get to very shortly. But overall, the Vyvanse has been good. The thing is, it never used to last long enough, so that's why the boosters are in there. It's very common. I know heaps of people now that are on Vyvanse, exactly the same, actually, 50 milligram Vyvanse plus the 2 boosters. So that's becoming, I don't know if you'd say the gold standard, but it seems to be the way that a lot of people are being treated with ADHD moving forward. Of course, there being other medications as well, like Ritalin and Strattera that can be used as well. But in this case, for me, we found the dexamphetamine varieties work the best. But there is a problem. Now, it's not as big of a problem anymore, which is good, but when my Vyvanse tails off, and a lot of people will be sitting there going, yep, I feel this too. I get this, and we get this big rush of anxiety and then this depression sort of feeling, real murky sort of depressed mood, really anxious and highly strung and not having a good time of it. And that used to always happen to me at the end of my Vyvanse sort of dose, at the end towards the afternoon, end of the day. I remember when I was doing my thesis big time, I'd be pumping the Vyvanse so I could finally sit at the computer, concentrate and do my bloody thesis anyway. And I remember every afternoon I just used to get so depressed. And for a long time there, I thought it was the thesis. And it probably was to a certain degree, but it definitely was the tailing off of the Vyvanse medications, the tailing off of its effects for the day, which then brought on these other undesired effects, being the anxiety and those depressive, murky sort of feelings. I have found that the Dexys, the 2 boosters have really made that process a lot better. So it evens out. Again, you sort of coast into the end of the day, Instead of dropping off a cliff It's a nice slow down, round the S's, round to a nice, happy sort of, good mood and energy state and get ready for bed, basically, and start winding down for sleep. But that anxiety and depression was super bad. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day. She's on, great listener of the show. She's on dexamphetamine, but she was on Vyvanse originally, and she went off it and couldn't handle, which is fair enough, the anxiety and the depression. It was just too much. And she made the decision that the benefits of the medication were being outweighed by the negative side effects. And there's a lot of side effects, not eating is another one, which contributes to that anxiety and depression. That's something I really discovered, just going off on a tangent slightly, how important it is. Here's a tip for you, how important water and food is to this medication. Holy dooly, if I haven't eaten, those anxiety feelings and that depressive feeling is so much stronger, so much more intense. The problem with this medication is you're on the go. For starters, it suppresses your appetite. It is, I think it's like the third choice medication for obesity or something, Vyvanse is, because it's so good at getting people to drop the weight, which is exactly what has happened to me over the last little bit. I was at 86 kilos. I'm now down to about 72. And that's pretty much all happened since the Vyvanse come on board and the dexamphetamine. But yeah, so it's so important. Drinking water, eating food, it sounds basic, but it's easy to forget when you're on these medications and not feel like you really need it. But then at the end of the day, when the Vyvanse or the dexamphetamine or the stimulant medication starts to wear off, then all of a sudden it's like, holy dooly, I haven't eaten since breakfast, and even that was only a banana. I am famished and I'm so dehydrated, and then everything is that much more intense. So word of advice, doctors should tell you this, but they don't. I found this out, I guess, the hard way, and from talking to other people who have gone through similar things. But yes, food and water is so, so important. But anyway, back to my friend. So she was on Vyvanse and decided that the steep sort of drop-off was too much. So she went on to the dexamphetamine only, multiple dosages throughout the day. And for her, it's interesting because she suffers from a degree of emotional dysregulation as well, which comes with ADHD, of course. It's a big symptom, commonly overlooked symptom of ADHD, but it's a big one. But she finds that it's much easier on her, and she doesn't have that anxiety and that depression. She tells me that maybe a little bit, her moods get a little bit more, sort of the troughs and the peaks get that little bit bigger throughout the day, but not as bad as mine, I guess. And she's able to tolerate that where I couldn't, but she wasn't able to tolerate the anxiety, depression at the end of the day from the Vyvanse. Even with boosters, she tried boosters too, and it just wasn't working for her. Whereas I can handle that a bit better. And I was trying to think, why is it that perhaps I can handle the anxiety, depression stuff a little bit better? And I'm not sure. I think, though, part of it is that I'm used to being anxious and depressed. So my friend doesn't have a diagnosis of, for example, generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder. Her anxiety comes from her ADHD, which is a good kind because you can medicate that quite well. And I've got anxiety that comes from everywhere. So my suspicion was always that potentially, because I'm so used to being anxious all the time and depressed, I just sort of roll with it a little bit more and can sort of handle it, I guess, not that I want to. And maybe that's a reason why I can stand the Vyvanse whereas she couldn't. Not sure. There's no real way to tell. But it is true, I am very accustomed to those feelings, whereas she's not as much. Obviously, we go through it all. All of us go through ups and downs, all of us. All of us have negative emotion and anxiety. But mine's chronic. It's always there. It doesn't go away, unfortunately. But for her, it does. So perhaps that's why I've got, I don't know, maybe I'm calloused from years and years of being anxious and I can handle it a bit more. I'm not sure. But anyway, just something interesting I thought the other day. I was like, why on earth can I put up with it where other people maybe can't? Because I put up with it before the boosters came along, when I was doing my thesis, there was a long time there that every day I was battling this drop-off, every day. Once I figured out to eat and drink water, it wasn't as bad, but still, there was that drop-off every day. But But I was able to sort of push through it and get that thesis done, by the way. If you haven't listened to some of the early episodes, you can hear me doing my thesis and how difficult that was for me. But yeah, so I don't know, it's just a little theory as to why I could handle, or I can handle, maybe that anxiety, depression a little bit more where other people can't. But at the same time, the emotional dysregulation, no chance. I've got nothing there. So it's interesting. Her and I are very similar, but we are different. And this is another sign that medication works differently for everybody. Just because it works in X amount of way for me doesn't mean it will for you, and vice versa, and all that sort of stuff. We're all very individual, and our responses to medication is as well. But there you go. There are some commonalities though, and especially the people who are medicated with the stimulants, you guys will definitely be agreeing with me, I'd say, about the whole drop off at the end of the day and the emotional dysregulation component, which again, let me just say, is a component of ADHD. It's a very overlooked component. Everyone thinks of ADHD as, oh yeah, inattention, or hyperactivity, or both, one or the other or both, depending if you've got combined type or whatever. But a big part of ADHD as well is this emotional dysregulation, which is why it's hard to differentiate sometimes ADHD from, say, borderline personality disorder, because it has that component of emotional dysregulation as well, although it is much more well known or well accepted, or I don't know, people seem to just think emotional dysregulation, yep, that's, BPD, but don't remember it's ADHD as well. So there you go. And if you're lucky enough like me to have both, well, yeah, you can see why I couldn't handle the ups and downs, that's for sure. But yeah, so the medication, so I've made the decision that although I do get that anxiety sort of depression feeling, that these medications, it's worth it for me, because a big part of my anxiety and stress is that I'm not getting stuff done. I said before in the last episode that things are running a bit rough. Like the room needs a clean, the car needs a clean, I need to go grocery shopping, those basic fundamentals of living and being an adult. The last week, 2 weeks has dropped away a bit. And, I get very stressed and anxious about that. It clutters my mind as well. But, the anxiety's there going, geez, I've let this happen again. What's going on? I need to stop doing this. This is killing me, it's just grinding me down. And I get very stressed at this idea, and this is anxiety for a lot of people, that our challenges in life, whatever those challenges are, if you don't feel like you have the tools or the capabilities to be able to tick those challenges off, that's when you get very stressed and very anxious about things and about the future, because you're not in control, you're not strong enough. I don't like saying that. It's not that you're not strong enough, not capable, or at least feel like you're not capable. And that's a very anxiety-provoking thought. And that's what happens a lot with people with ADHD, because we can't concentrate and get these tasks done. So that's where the anxiety from ADHD comes along, which is very much a symptom of ADHD more broadly, because we're not getting the things done that we need to do. The fuel tank's always on empty, got no food in the house, the room looks like a pigsty, you know what I mean? So it's very, very important that although this medication doesn't fix all of my anxiety, but it does certainly fix the component of me not being able to do the things I need to do. And it's a good feeling when I get those things done, because there's that dopamine, which we all know and all crave, and all of a sudden we're killing it. But I did notice over the last week or two, have noticed, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, that things are running a bit rough again. And I think it's no surprise that it's probably because I ran short about 5 days of my medication of the dexamphetamine, not the Vyvanse, but the dexamphetamine. So I was just running that bit rougher, and I was really annoyed because I calculated the days wrong until I could get my next script, and that's why I sort of fell short. Because the workaholic, is always there and telling me to do more. So sometimes still I fall into the habit of having slightly more than my prescription allows, but I do that not for fun and just to get kicks out of it. It's so I get stuff done and I can feel good about that. Unfortunately, I got my time frames mixed up and I went short a little bit there. And I think that definitely is part of the reason as to why I've had this sort of rough week, 2 weeks, because I've been a bit lean on the medication. And, and I know once, I don't know if it's my OCD or what, but actually it could well be autism, in the sense that like the medication's like a routine, and all of a sudden the afternoon sort of lunchtime afternoon routine of having the boosters wasn't there, and that really threw me out of whack. So, thankfully now I've got the script back, and as we know, I'm working on that workaholic to try and dial it down a little bit so I can actually enjoy life. That'd be fun. But the medication's back. So now I'm hoping that a lot of these little issues that I spoke about in the previous episode, if you haven't listened, I highly recommend it. It's a beauty. But at the same time, I'm hoping now a few of those issues will be resolved, which would be great. But now that I've got the full medication back again, tomorrow's going to be a big day of resumes, sending them out, trying to really overcome this negative feeling I've got at the moment as far as my work goes. I'm locked and loaded now, which is exciting. So tomorrow it's going to be a big resume day, and I'm sure I'll tell you all about that as well. But that's it for now. So dexamphetamine, Vyvanse, stimulants, they can do some really great things for people and be really, really useful, have great utility and be great tools for a person to proceed, through life with ADHD and being able to put it on the back burner. But it doesn't come without its problems. There's plenty of side effects, and some of them I get, unfortunately. And a big one for a lot of people is that anxiety and sort of depression towards the end of the day. But for some reason, I've been able to sort of handle that better than maybe other people, or at least I can accept it as part of just my being, as part of the day. I've been able to accept it maybe a little bit more where other people won't accept it and it's not good enough. And my theory is maybe it's because, and this is a bit sad, but maybe it's because I'm calloused from so long of being depressed and anxious, and I'm just sort of used to it, so I just sort of roll with it. But anyway, maybe it's also because of the great things it allows me to do. That's a big part of it too. The cost might be the same, but maybe the benefit is actually greater for me than some other people. I'm not sure. So it overpowers that cost side, the negative side of the medication. So I don't know, just musing on a few ideas. I've obviously had my medication today. You can probably hear it in my voice. This is 18 minutes, nice big episode. This one all about stimulants. So, but anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening as always. If you're enjoying the show, feel free to subscribe, give the show a great rating because it's really good for the algorithm, and you can share it around with your mates, and you can follow me on Instagram at elliot.t.waters. All right, until next time, see you later.